Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hammer Podcast. Today is January 28th, 2021, and I am speaking with Jay. Jay went to the Summit School in Nyack, New York, from 91 to 92. Thank you for being on the podcast today, Jay.
Thanks for having me on the Hammer, Jay.
Coming over and telling your story. So, the floor is yours. Go ahead and let her rip, my friend.
Well, I guess I'd start out in my childhood, when I can go back all the way back to 5 years old, if I may.
Sure.
I was 5 years old. I was in kindergarten, and I was mildly hyper. I didn't really have a lot of issues going on. I was pretty hyper. And my mom thought it was a good idea to put me on an abundance of Benadryl on a daily basis.
Benadryl?
Yeah. Actually, it's common. In the 80s, it went around New York City, it also went around Long Island. There was a bunch of parents that got into giving their kids Benadryl to calm them down when they were hyper.
Oh, probably to make them drowsy, probably.
Make them drowsy,
yes.
Yeah. Now, most of those kids weren't on it for like 6 months at a time, but I was. And I was on very high doses of it. Higher doses than you would take as an adult for an allergic reaction. And my behavior began to deteriorate. It wasn't bad. I just couldn't concentrate, and I wouldn't always listen to directions, and and my behavior began to deteriorate more on the Benadryl. And my mother took me to a neurologist, an endocrinologist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, you name it. She took me there. She wanted to get me desperately into special education to get me more services. In going through the testing that I went through at all of these places, most of the professionals initially told her, well, your son could have some hyperactivity or attention deficit of some kind, but he's really gifted. He's a gifted child, and we really should work to bring that up. I didn't live in the best household. My mom and dad, my dad was certainly rough with me and my sister. My mom did the best that she could, given the tools that she was given. She was also abused by her parents as a kid, and she lost her parents by the time she was 20 years old, both of them. So, she didn't have all the tools necessary to parent very well. So she just kept trying to get me diagnosed with something. Specifically because the school districts at that time, unlike today, they refused to give any services to anybody without a specific diagnosis. So she wanted to get me services, so she brought me all around the place, eventually finding somebody who would put me on medication. And by the time I believe it was 6 or 7 years old, I was on Ritalin. I ended up having horrible reactions to Ritalin. I was put on Tofranol, Silert, all different types of drugs, none of which worked, none of which were effective. Looking back on it, I think the bottom line is I was never ADHD. Like, I was a gifted kid who was being put on drugs, from early childhood, and the drugs were seriously fucking me up. Nothing worked. Nothing got me better. Every single drug I got put on, I deteriorated worse and worse and worse. My behavior got worse. By second grade, I was getting suspended from school on a regular basis, beating kids up, cursing at teachers, throwing desks, throwing chairs. I was out of control.
The medication was basically was like you said, fucking you up pretty bad.
Yeah.
There
And
was really
I had
nothing wrong.
again
There was really nothing wrong with you. It was just basic hyperactivity, like a lot of children. You know what I
basic
mean?
hyperactivity, but then like it becomes when you're that young and you're going to all of these mental health professionals, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If everybody's telling you that there's something wrong with you, you end up living that life.
Right. You end up believing it. Yeah.
You start to believe it. I mean, by the time I was in third grade, and I got suspended from school, I'll never forget, crying to my mother in her arms and saying, "Why am I like this? I don't want to be this way. Please, like, take this anger out of me." And yeah, nothing worked. Went from one elementary school where the principal of that school was abusive to many of the students at the school. Not physically, a little physically. He'd pull you down the hall by the ear, but nothing horrible.
Right.
But he was emotionally abusive to the students, the staff, the PTA, everybody. My parents pulled me out of that school, put me in another elementary school in the same district. And I lost all my friends that I had at that school, and it sucked. And my behavior further deteriorated. Eventually, by the end of fifth grade, I got kicked out of that elementary school right before my graduation. And they wanted to send me to a BOCES. I don't know if you guys have BOCES out there, but it's a Board of Education Cooperative Educational Services. Basically, it's a special ed school.
Okay.
And I went there with many other children, emotionally disturbed and all different diagnoses. Went there for 2 years, and I didn't really have much progress. And I really wanted to go back to the district school, but the district had other plans for me, and they didn't want me to go back into district school. They didn't think that the high school BOCES program was right for me, they didn't think the high school program was going to be good for me, which started at I think eighth grade there. So they recommended me going to a residential treatment center. We went to a bunch of different ones to look at until we settled on one, which was the Summit School.
Now, were you living in Nyack at the time or somewhere else?
No, grew up on Long Island. I've lived on Long Island my
Okay.
whole life. Never moved out except for that time. So I mean, it was for me it was an hour and a half, 2 hours from my parents, from my family.
A whole new world, basically.
It was a whole new world.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was tough. I didn't get along with my sister as a child. To the point where she literally celebrated when I left, which broke my heart. I didn't really have support, and I kind of felt like even then, I'll never forget the day that we drove up to Nyack. I wasn't, thank God I wasn't like, picked up at my house, thrown into a van like all these other stories that I hear, and didn't know where I was going.
Right.
I knew exactly where I was going. I knew my parents were getting rid of me. And they dropped me off there, and I'll never forget, crying in my father's arms, "Please don't do this. Please don't leave me here." And they did. So
Now this is not a religious place; it's a state-run home.
it's not a state run. It's run by a foundation, non-profit organization called the Summit School.
Okay.
It's got a board. It's got a board of directors. It's got executive directors. It's funded by the state in terms of the school pays the children's tuition.
Oh, okay.
Either kids who were supposed to go to juvie, who they were said you either go to juvenile hall or you get sent to this school, or it's kids who their district didn't know what to do with them and had no other options for them supposedly, and sent them off.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went there, and from like the very first few days, it was hell. Absolutely. The minute like my parents left, I knew it was going to be hell. I just felt it. they were just so rude. They were just so nasty. The counselors, they were rude. They were nasty. They were cold. There was no love. There was no compassion in much of any of them. There wasn't a few of them, few and far between. But most of them were just very aggressive, very nasty. And like, I'll never forget, like the first day I was there, you know, watching kids be thrown into what this guy, Johnny, everybody called him Barney Rubble. He looked like Barney Rubble. So everybody called him Barney Rubble. And I'll never forget, like the first couple of days that I was there, like seeing him like pull a kid by his ear down the hallway. That didn't work. The kid falls on the ground. He starts dragging him by his hair with the kid kicking and screaming until he brought him to what Johnny so lovingly called the box.
The box.
The box was my little place of hell. The box was, I think 4 foot would be too generous. I really think it was 3 foot wide, but let's call it 4 foot wide.
Was it like a closet?
It's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
It was a converted closet. And it's not like it had a big window on the door. It had a window that was this big on the door, and then white walled plexiglass, white walled plastic all along the walls. It was maybe 6 feet deep and 4 feet wide. And that day, I remember going past it and like thinking to myself, yo, that could be me. And like kids kicking and screaming the door as they're holding the door closed and screaming like bloody murder. Like, let me the hell out of here. It was like 2 or 3 days at most, like before my first experience in there. And I think I cursed at a kid. You know, I think a kid pissed me off. I cursed at him. He went and told the counselor. And I was thrown into the quiet room. I threw a fit. I'll never forget it. I threw the biggest fit I ever threw in my life. I mean, I was just dropped off by my parents and felt so abandoned, scared out of my mind, and I threw a fit. And Johnny Mack came, Barney Rubble, called him Johnny Mack too, came into, dragged me down to the quiet room exactly the same way. I think I remember correctly. He dragged me by my legs, but started with my ear. He loves doing the ear thing. And brought me into the quiet room and sat on top of me.
Now, how heavy is this man?
Oh God, he must have easily been 200 pounds then, maybe 250.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he's a big dude. It was all fat. He's a big dude.
That's a lot of weight on the rib cage.
I was like 70 pounds. I was like the skinniest, tiniest little thing ever. I was like 7 pounds at that age. Maybe I was like, I don't know, maybe I was like 4'3". I was a really tiny kid. And he sat on me for what must have been at least a half an hour, maybe an hour, and said, I'm not getting up until you stop screaming. I'm like, but I can't breathe. Like, please get off me. Like, and I'd have to like press myself up a little bit just to speak, because if I pressed myself down, I couldn't speak because I couldn't fucking breathe. And he said, I'm not getting off of you until you calm down. And eventually I gave in, and eventually I calmed down. And then I was in there all night long that first time. They didn't let me out. They didn't let me out to pee. They didn't let me out to poop.
Did they have a bucket or anything in there that you could?
No, the kids pissed on the floor or on the walls, and they shat on the floor. The room smelled like piss and shit. There's shit stains on the wall, blood stains on the wall from kids slamming their fists against the wall.
Or their head.
What? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man.
And that occurred on a regular basis, at least once a week. It wasn't always Johnny Mack. It was Johnny. It was Bill. It was another Bill. It was Mike. All these are all different counselors that worked there. I just released a video recently about this guy Tom, and this guy Tom You know, they're just the way that they restrained you is just so abusive. And I thought my life was over, and I tried to take my own life. I slit my wrists within like the first month of me being there.
And how old were you at that time?
13, maybe 12 or 91. Maybe it was 90. Maybe I started going there in 90. I'm sorry. But
It's
I was
okay.
13. I was 13 when I started going there. Um, yeah.
Hmm.
And, you know, I watched like so many other kids. Like that was even the scarier part is watching the other kids get abused. You know, I've been, you know, this guy Bill, 6'4", ex-professional football player, friends with Lawrence Taylor, movie star. He loved boasting about the movie that he was in. He played a security guard in it. Huge dude. I mean, this guy was like 400 pounds easily, like 6 foot something, 400 pounds, massively built guy. Um, I'll say massively built black guy. And I say that because I came from Smithtown, Long Island, where there was one black kid in our district at the time. So I wasn't exposed to anybody different than me. And it scared me at first,
Right.
especially, you know, this massive dude attacking me. But he took me by my throat so many times, lifted me up by my throat where I couldn't breathe, and would throw me. Imagine a 6'4" guy putting you all the way up as far as his arm goes, up onto the wall with his hand around your neck, holding you up there by your neck, telling you you better calm the fuck down before I kick your ass.
Wow.
Shit like that was regular. They had a point system, of course. I think most of these places have point systems. I don't know. But they had a point system. You didn't get enough points because you didn't do enough schoolwork or you didn't do your homework or something. Then you're put on cottage restriction, where you're not allowed out. You're not allowed to see the light of day. You're stuck in your cottage all day, every day, sometimes for weeks at a time. And once you're in cottage, it's really hard to get out of cottage.
Were you in a like a big room with a whole bunch of other kids and bunk beds, or
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. So I was in. I think I stayed in like 4 different rooms in the time that I was there. One time it was me and 2 other roommates. One time it was me and 3 other roommates, and one time it was me and 6 other roommates. And they were pretty decent sized rooms. You know, like about like the size of a dorm room in college.
Okay.
Um, you know, not very nicely equipped at all. Like the shittiest wood furniture you've ever seen. Really nasty showers, nasty bathrooms. Nothing was really nice about the place. Um, but
They didn't
you
have
know,
they didn't have the kids doing any type of cleaning. They didn't have a service come in, or
we had jobs that we'd have. We'd either be in laundry, or have to work in the kitchen, or we'd have to work in the gardens, or we'd always have a job to do after school all the time. And if we didn't go to that job, of course, we lost points. And of course, that's sort of like child labor laws right there. It's like we didn't get paid to do those jobs. We were working our asses off. I'll never forget working my ass off in the laundry in the kitchen, and never paid a dime for it. And I always ask, why don't we get paid for this? Because this is your job. Okay. Okay. Thank you for giving me a job.
yeah,
You know, but like, you know, the worst was like just watching these other kids. You know, I got hurt by so many different counselors there. Like the stories, I could go on and on and on about things, but like, you know, watching kids go through one thing and being afraid of going through that same thing and then ending up going through that same thing. Like, you know, I'll never forget, there was this one student this was probably like month 2 or 3 that I was there. This one student that was there, he was one of my roommates, and I loved him dearly. And he was made to strip in the middle of the night because he wasn't going to sleep and he was talking in the room. So he's made to strip down to his boxers and go into the common room, into the main common room in that dorm.
Yeah.
And stand in the corner all night long. Couldn't move. Again, you can't go to the bathroom. You can't look at anybody. You can't talk to anybody passing by. Female counselors would walk by and make fun of him. I know this because the same thing happened to me. You know, like a few days later, it's like all of a sudden that became this counselor, Fred, that became his thing. It's like all of a sudden he starts bringing, you know, taking kids out in the middle of the night, making them stand in the corner in their boxer shorts.
Now, when they would walk by and laugh at you, what were they saying anything? Were they demeaning you or saying derogatory terms?
It was just it was like demeaning stuff that they were saying. You know, counselors, women counselors.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, geez, you know, I feel like it was. I don't remember. I got to be honest, but I feel like it was like stuff like, oh, there it is, Jason again, fucking up. Yeah,
oh, okay.
He's a real good one. Like, just really shit, just to tear you down, tear who you are down. And I at the forefront of my mind is, like, you know, the most abusive moments at my school. It's been at the forefront of my mind this whole conversation, so it's kind of hard for my mind to go anywhere. So okay. I'll touch on that.
Sure.
One of the we used to play spades. It's a card game.
Right.
And we used to play spades with, it would always be a couple of counselors and a couple of students, and we'd sit there and play spades for hours. Johnny, I think, was losing a game or something happened, and I called him Barney Rubble. I'm like, come on, Barney Rubble, or some shit like that. He says, what did you say? And his whole face gets beet red. And like, he got really mad, and I got really scared. And I jumped over the couch that I was sitting on. I darted down the hallway to my room, slammed my door. He slams my door open, and he orders me to strip. And I told him, that's not happening. He says, take all your clothes off right now. I'm like, dude, I'm not taking my fucking clothes off. Like, I'm not taking my clothes off, no. And he grabbed me, and he forcefully stripped me. And he threw me into the shower, ice cold shower. He put it on as cold as it goes, and he wouldn't let me out. And as I'd be screaming, please let me out, he'd be making fun of the size of my penis as it shrunk in the ice cold.
Ice cold water, yeah.
In the ice cold water, yeah. And you know, kind of said, you really enjoy, well, did say, you enjoy calling me Barney Rubble, huh? Well, now I'm getting my enjoyment. Like,
sounds pretty sadistic.
Yeah, and it wasn't just one time. It happened all the time. It became like every few weeks he'd do it to me for something that I did. And I always knew what was coming, and I always tried to fight back. Like, not always. The first time I didn't really fight back. I kind of was stiff. I didn't know what the fuck to do. But eventually I started like trying to fight back, but it was fucking hopeless. The dude was huge and I was tiny and I had no muscle, and
right.
It was hell. So yeah, there's that. You know, there was some fun that went on there. You know, it wasn't all horrible. I made the best friends I ever had in my life at that school. I love them dearly to this day. I'm still in touch. Well, now I'm in touch with them ever since I unfolded. But I made some really close friends, and you know, interestingly enough, this was the first, they took me off medication. Lots of other kids were pumped full of medications. They loved to medically abuse kids there. They pumped them so full of medications, they could barely walk, they could barely talk. They would just be the slowest people in the world.
Like zombies.
But them, they knew I was on medications all my life, and they took me off medication. Now, it was sort of a godsend that they did, because there was this teacher there. Eventually this will all come, but it turns out that I am a little gifted, and especially in music. And during my time there, there was this teacher, Bobby, music teacher, and I think he saw the pain we all went through. I don't think he knew what it was. I don't think he knew what was going on. Maybe he had an idea, I don't know. But he knew we were rough with each other because that's what he saw when we went to school, but I don't think he really knew to the extent. The teachers, the teachers were never in the dorms. They didn't experience the residence life. They didn't know what the residential life was. They just experienced what happened in school. So Bobby, in the year and a half or so that I was there, taught me how to play drums, taught me how to play guitar, taught me how to play bass guitar, and taught me how to play piano. He gave me private instruction. I got instruction, we had music class, I think once or twice a week. And by the time I was left there, as much as a 13-year-old can, 14-year-old can, I was pretty good. I was jamming on all those instruments. And to learn all of those instruments in I think it was less than 18 months.
And being that you weren't on the medication,
I was able to.
Your mind was clearer.
Yeah.
You were able to pick it up, yes.
Yeah. He was my savior, he taught me he saw how I was always angry and frustrated with what was going on there and just going on in life in general. And he said, you got to get this out in music, beat it out on the drums, write a song, write a poem. You got to get it out. If you get it out, it'll change your life. I'll never forget him telling me that. And I did, all throughout my time there. That was, other than my friends, and other than him, everything else there was hell. The social workers didn't listen. I told them about the abuse that was going on. They blamed me. Even later on after I unfolded, and I'll tell you that story in a minute, but even later on after I unfolded, I found out that, they blamed me for everything. They said in my records, he was abusive towards the staff.
That wasn't true.
He blames everybody else. Sure, it was true. Did I curse at them? You're damn right. You beat the shit out of me? Yes, I curse at you. Absolutely.
Right.
Is that abusive or is that protecting myself?
Right, but protecting yourself is not being abusive.
Right.
Yeah.
But
that's what I was saying.
Yeah, they didn't see it. They didn't see it that way. They just blamed me for everything that went on. When I call my parents and tell them everything that was going on, because I did. This was a regular thing at the school. It's got to be a regular thing at all these schools. I'd imagine so, unless all the parents who send them there really don't give a fuck about them. But is it okay to curse on this thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I used to call my parents hysterical crying. I told them what Johnny Mack did to me in the shower. I told them of being sat on in the quiet room overnight. I was sat on one time, I had by another Bill. I was sat on by a Bill for hours at a time until I calmed down. I would tell my parents this stuff, cry to them, please take me out of here, please take me home. And then Johnny Mack, the head counselor, gets on the phone and tells them I'm lying and I'm making it all up. And my parents believed him. And that's why I stayed. Eventually, I was dating, I had my first girlfriend there. and her name, I won't say her name, but she was African American. She was black, and I'll never forget. Man, I love that girl. she was such a sweetheart. You know, we were all troubled. We all had issues. We all had our issues, and so did she. But she was just my little angel. She made me feel happy. She was like the only thing there that made me feel really, really happy. She'd kiss me, and like everything else disappeared. And then one day I was in after school detention, and this guy Paul was the supervisor of the school at that time, and he was the supervisor of after school detention. And this kid says something to me about, my girlfriend. Well, that really pissed me off. But this kid was like easily 2 times the size of me. Like, he would have pummeled me if I did anything to him. But I got up anyway, and like I started walking over to him. I was just gonna yell at him. I wasn't gonna touch him. Like, again, I would have gotten my ass kicked by him if I touched him.
Right. And
mind you, there were many, many physical altercations with other students and me and all the other students. Everybody fought each other. There was constant fighting. So I get up to go and go up to the guy and be like, what the fuck? But I didn't have time to. Paul hit me over the head with a telephone and knocked me out. And I went into convulsions on the floor. And I remember waking up and seeing my arm. I woke up out of being knocked out, and all I could see is my arms and my legs flailing. I didn't know what was going on. It was like the craziest thing, but I was apparently having a seizure, and I never had a seizure in my life before that. It was the first and last time I ever had a seizure. And I got up, feel my head. There's a huge bump on my head. I look at my hand. Look at my hand, and there's blood on my hand.
They didn't take you for any medical help. You may have been concussed.
So I went up I ran out of after school detention. He tried to get me to stay in there. I ran out of after school detention. And I think on the 3rd floor were the administration offices. And I ran up there, and then I believe he was the director of just that location at the time, or maybe he was the principal of the school at the time. I can't remember exactly his position. His name was Richard. He's now the executive director of the entire organization. The schools in Queens, the school in Upper Nyack, this guy. And I went to him and I said, hey, Richie, look at my head. Look what Paul just did to me. He asked me what happened. I told him what happened. He looks at me, says, okay, what do you want me to do? I can call the police, but they might have a problem that you were about to attack this kid. I can call your parents, but I know they're going to get mad at you for trying to attack the kid. Or I can call the hospital, but then everybody's going to find out. What do you want me to do? And I start screaming at him. I'm like, Rich, are you fucking kidding me? I'm 14 years old. I'll never forget this day. I'm 14 years old. You're asking me to make the decision? He called the hospital. The ambulance came. The police came. And I went into the ambulance, and I was afraid I was going to die or something, because I was real dizzy. I was nauseous, like you said, concussion, like immediate feelings of like having a concussion. Went to the hospital. Child Protective Services came. Again, the police were there. My parents were called. I have the records from the hospital now. I still have them. Well, I got them. The records indicate that I had a bump on my head half the size of an egg. So like that high was the bump, that's pretty fucking big bump on your head.
Yeah, it is.
With blood, coming from it. And it says my story of what had occurred with the counselor. That was the last time I was ever at Summit. That was the last straw for my parents. They brought me home after that. Now, that brings me to another thing. My parents apparently, even though they didn't believe me about the abuse, supposedly, my parents found out that I was being hurt there because one time I came home for a home visit. Very rarely got to go home and see my parents, once every few months. And it was only for 2 days at a time, a weekend. And I came home for a home visit and I had bruises all over me. I don't remember this, okay? To this day, I don't remember this. But I had bruises all over me. And the reason why I found this out, again, people, survivors, get your damn records. Get your records from your school. By law, they must turn you over every freaking document. I pressured the school too. I had to deal with the law, their law firm to get it eventually. It took them like 3 or 4 months to finally get it to me. But in these records, I found out that I went home, had bruises all over me. My mother took me to the doctor to document that I had the bruises all over me and sends me back to fucking school, wondering why I had the bruises all over me. And in the records, it says Mrs. Samel calls Johnny and says that she had taken him to the doctor because he came home with bruises all over him. But Johnny says that he came back from vacation with bruises all over me and got it at home.
Oh,
which
man.
Was simply not true.
Oh.
Even the situation with the hospital. They wrote it up as, in my records, he was being physically restrained by Paul, and he bumped his head on the wall.
And they believe the counselors over you.
Of course.
Every time, yeah.
Everybody did. Let's get out of school. I think I've told you a lot about the school.
Oh,
mind you, we were on restrictions. We were on one-to-one. Like when I tried to commit suicide, I was on one-to-one for a month. I couldn't look at anybody. I couldn't talk to anybody. I had to eat in my room. Like I couldn't do anything with anybody for like a month. And like if I get into a fight with somebody, I'd be on that same one-to-one again. Any physical altercation, all of a sudden you're on one-to-one and you can't communicate with anybody. And you're locked in your room all the time.
Now this is a co-ed school.
Thank God.
Yes.
Yes.
But whenever you have a co-ed school with male staff, it's always a breeding ground for perverts. You know what I mean? I
mean, I know you know, but the rest of the world doesn't. I unfolded from my trauma. When I say unfolded, I remembered all my trauma about 8 months ago now. I was taking a hot shower in my house, and the shower went ice cold.
Oh no!
And I didn't. By the way, since Summit, the only thing I remembered at the forefront of my mind was this last thing getting hit over the head with a telephone. It was the only thing that I remembered. By the way, please remind me at some point to tell you what happened to Paul after he was found guilty of child abuse against me by CPS.
Okay.
But anyway, so I went in the shower goes cold, and I started hysterical crying, and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. 8 months ago, and I went got on the floor of the shower. I couldn't get out. Like I couldn't take myself out of the shower. Like almost like Johnny was standing right there, you know. And and all of a sudden I saw him. I saw Johnny right there making fun of my penis size.
Memories just started flooding back.
And it all happened in like 3 minutes. Like just every memory possible, at least what I thought was every memory possible, came flooding back into my mind at one time. Everything I've been telling you about. And that was it for me. I lost my mind after that. Like for a while. You know, I immediately when that happened, almost immediately, I said, man, I gotta call. I don't know how the hell I'm gonna get in contact with him, but I gotta call my buddy Jeff. Jeff was my best friend at Summit. I gotta call him. I gotta find him. I don't know where the hell he is. But I mean, I lost my mind. The only way I could describe it is just a complete breakdown, really. But it was like this sick breakdown where I became obsessed, very, very quickly obsessed. Like, holy shit, what are all these memories? Did that shit happen? Is that real? There's no fucking way that happened to me, and I didn't remember all this shit my whole life. Was it just me? Was I the only one this happened to? And I had to find out. I had to find the answers out to that. I became obsessed with finding out every piece of my puzzle at that point in time. I had to know everything from my childhood. I called childhood friends. I called my parents' friends from my childhood who were like a second set of parents for me. I called so many different people and asked them, like, what happened with this and what happened with that, and how was my behavior? Like, was it really that bad? But like the first phone call I made, I obsessively searched for Jeff's phone number online, and I found him, and I called him. And the first thing he said to me, first he's like, "Hey Jay, what's going on, man? I miss you so much, bro. How's things?" And I'm like, "Things are not so good right now." He's like, "Whoa." He's like, "Me neither." He's like, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, I got to talk to you about Summit." And he's like, "Oh, no, I can't talk to you about that." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, the place has pretty much killed me." He's like, "Jason, I'm dying." "What do you mean you're dying?" I'm like, "You're dying? How could you be dying?" And he's got congestive heart failure, and it's from drug and alcohol abuse ever since he left Summit. And he's just been covering up all the pain from Summit. And that got him talking. We talked and we cried for, must have been a couple of hours. We were on the phone just talking about everything that went on. And like so many times he was like, "I can't believe you don't remember. Like this happened to me and that happened to this kid and this happened to that." I'm like, "Dude, I don't really like." I remember now. Like I'm starting to remember. Like it's all starting to flood back, and like I didn't remember any of this. I'm like, "Jeff, like, was it just me and you? Like you and I were roommates. Was it just us?" He's like, "I don't think so." He's like, "But I don't really remember all that much else." He's like, "I remember it happened to this one and this one, but I don't know if it was everyone." He says, "Maybe it was just All Stars." All Stars was the name of the dorm that we were in. It was a group of kids that was between, they were supposed to be 13 when they went there, but there's kids that started there as early as 8 years old.
Oh my goodness.
8-year-olds at this fucking school. One of them was my roommate. So I got off the phone with him and I called my next roommate. And man, I loved that kid. And I called him and spoke to him, and it was this kid is like one of the toughest kids that I've ever known. Short kid, stocky. Now he's like this built kid. He's an he was in, you know, like on MMA on like TV and stuff. You know, all he wanted to do the rest of his life is what? Fight. Just gotta get out that aggression from this place. Toughest dude as nails, this kid. And he was crying like a baby, crying hysterical to me on the phone about what they did to him. And they did so much worse to him than was ever done to me. What was done to me, as compared to the other kids in the school, was fucking peanuts. Getting thrown in the shower, you made fun of your penis, big fucking deal. Really, it's nothing compared to what these other kids went on. Then I found the next kid, Same day, found like 4 or 5 kids in the same day online. And then I called Jeff back. And I made him a promise I never should have made him, because it turned me into an insane, obsessive individual for a while. And I called him back and I said, yeah, dude, like I spoke to this guy, and I spoke to this guy, and I spoke to that guy. Like, this was all of our good friends. I'm like, it happened to all of us. Like, they didn't skip a single fucking person there. And I'm like, Jeff, I promise you, before you die, he told me he had 6 months to a year to live. I told him, before you die, I'm going to shut this place down. I swear to you. So that made me become seriously obsessed with shutting this place down. And I created a Facebook group. My background is in a lot of things, music, but like really the biggest thing that I have going for me is I'm really good in marketing. And I'm very good with the internet and social media. And I've been fortunate enough since I left the Summit School to have really good experiences in life. And, you know, I've been all over the press. I've been in Rolling Stone magazine. I've been on, you know, Fox News, CNN, NBC, WPIX, like all the locals. For music activism, I've been an activist for 20 years. Always felt the need to raise my voice at people for doing bad things. Never knew why. So I said, and through my music career over the past 10 years, I developed relationships with some of the biggest artists in the world, who are all activist-based artists. And I developed relationships with the press, very close relationships with the press, where I call them at any time and say, hey, I got this story for you. Can I tell you what's going on? And they're like, Jay, let's do an article. And they'd write an article for me. And I've been blessed financially as well. I've done really well for myself financially. I own a veterinary hospital. I own an insurance brokerage. I own a record label and music production company. So I've done really well for myself financially. And I say that because sadly, most people who experience this abuse at these schools, they generally, the majority of them don't do well after these experiences. So I said to myself, fuck, I have all these resources. I have money. I have the press. I have celebrities. I have all these resources. I might be able to do something about this. And I said, let me create a Facebook group. I went and created a Facebook group. To date, we have 500 people in the Facebook group that have gotten, you know, about 430 of them at this point are ex-Summit students, staff, parents, and siblings. Lots of them on our Facebook group, the Summit School Exposed, came out with their own stories of abuse.
That's the hashtag, right?
The Summit School Exposed, yeah.
Okay.
And I started to realize, and this grounded me somewhat. There was no way I was getting grounded at this point, really, but this grounded me to at least a point that, you know, there are stories on there of this one counselor with, it turned out he did it with more than one student, but he would get kids addicted to cocaine and give them cocaine once. The next time he comes up to them for cocaine, well, you got to jerk me off. Next time he comes up for these are boys.
Boys.
This man, these are boys that this man is molesting. Next time they come up, hey man, can I have some coke? Give me a blowjob. Next time they come up, pull your pants down.
And these were what, 13, 14-year-old kids, young kids.
Yeah. And this counselor was one of the 6'4", 350-pound men that did it. And, you know, listen, the gym teacher at the school, this was all found out in the group. The gym teacher of the school was, I don't have real proof that he actually molested any girls yet. I'll get it. Yeah, listen.
Right now it's alleged, yes.
Right. I have 400 students that came together. There are tens of thousands of students who went there. When I get even 2,000 of those students, when I get the message to 2,000 of the students, everything is going to change. The real stories are going to come out. You're going to start to see patterns of behavior from the same counselors over and over and over again.
Right.
But the gym teacher there was sexually inappropriate with many girls there, and many girls from the time that I went there, from 10 years before I went there, and 10 years that I went after I went there, have the same fucking story. And I only have 400 people together. And maybe out of those 400 people, maybe if we're lucky, 200 of them are girls. And out of those 200 girls, out of those 200 girls, maybe 50 of them even had the nerve to come out with their abuse stories. Out of those 50 of them, 10% of them were touched sexually inappropriately by this man. So it's fucking rampant. Most of the kids that went to school there have Stockholm syndrome. I'm diagnosing them with that. I'm no professional, but it's clear as day. One student comes out in the group and says, so-and-so did this to me. He raped me. He got me addicted to cocaine. He beat the crap out of me. He broke my ribs. I mean, so many kids, broken bones, broken noses, busted eye sockets, permanent vision problems, broken arms, broken legs. Like, again, what I went through, I didn't have any broken bones. I had bruises. My penis was made fun of. Okay. These people were fucking heavily abused. And then other students have the nerve, I hate using that because I feel bad that they feel the need to do that, to come out and say, that counselor was the best person in the world. Don't you talk about him that way. What you're saying is an absolute lie. These kids it took them so much power to finally speak their story. And then somebody comes along and tells them they're a liar. But that's Stockholm syndrome.
Right.
And it's real. And I don't blame those same kids. Some of them, I released a video earlier. Some of those same people were texting me as I released this video of this guy, Tom, who abused lots of people there, including me. I from like 2 or 3 people, I got like really, really nasty text messages. Oh, there's your sick psycho Jason again, obsessing and making up lies. I said to them, namaste. I've changed. 4 months ago, I was fighting with them. I was arguing with them. I was angry with them. I was angry at everyone. But now I say namaste. I pray that you heal. And I do. I really do. Because the people who have Stockholm syndrome very often were abused the worst. So I feel horrible about those kids.
It's kind of like a victim going back to the abuser and saying, Basically, he did it because it's my fault.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. Um, and the word got out there so much to the Summit community, the ex-parents, the current parents. I had this mother contact me. Um, you could look it up. You could look up the name Bayla, Bayla, and the Summit School. And I can only say that because this is public information.
Right.
She was raped. This is what really gets me. Really gets me. She was raped at the school about 2.5, 3 years ago. She was raped by another student, not by a staff member. When the mother found out, the mother went to Richard, who again, Richard, you fuck, you piece of shit, Richard. Went to Richard and said, my daughter was raped in your school. What are you going to do about it? She wasn't raped. These kind of things happen here. These kind of things happen here. You got to understand the type of kids that go to school here, right, Richie? She was at the time, a 14-year-old autistic girl. So in the middle of my insanity unfolding from all this, and also, I mean, I ended up on bipolar medication. I was on Lexapro and an SSRI. I was misdiagnosed by a psychiatrist and put on an SSRI. He totally ignored the fact that I had PTSD. Didn't even look at the fact that I had PTSD. Put me on this SSRI without a mood stabilizer, which is usually sure to flip somebody out eventually if you have PTSD or bipolar. So all while this was going on, I forgot to take a dose of my medication. And I really lost it. I went into a manic phase. I went into like a highly, highly manic phase, worse than I was ever. I'd never really been in a full manic phase in my life. In the middle of my manic phase, besides a whole bunch of other really crazy shit happening, this mother calls me up. That day I was about to kill myself. I was going to take my life that day. I was down at the beach. I had a bottle of pills. I had a bottle of my SSRI in my hands. And I was going to take my life. It was the same way my cousin took her life. My cousin was bipolar. She killed herself with Lexapro. So I knew it could be done pretty easily. I knew all I had to do is drink down the bottle and I'd be dead in a few days. So I went down to the beach. It was my favorite place. And a bunch of shit happened. One of the things that happened, well, I'll get to that later. In the middle of all of this, I got this phone call from the mother. And she said, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm on Long Island with Bayla right now. I'd really like you to come and see us. We'd like to talk to you. She saved my life, man. This little girl who was raped there 3 years ago saved my life, and I went and talked to her. She was like 20 minutes from my house at a different residential school, which is actually a really, really good school for autistic children that like builds up their talents and builds these kids up and makes them the best that they can be. And I went there and I met with her, and man, I was insane that day. I was hysterical, crying. One of the first things I did is cried to her and told her, I'm so sorry, this is all my fault. And I felt like every child that got abused there afterwards was my fault.
It was your fault, yeah.
Because I never stood up and said something. All these years, 30 fucking years, thousands and thousands of kids who went there that I felt like I should have saved and could have with my voice if I had just said something sooner. And she said, no, she says, you're saving us now. She says, you're doing so good. My mom told me everything you're doing. She's autistic. She's got so many more difficult things to deal with than I will ever have. And she is the sweetest, most loving, beautiful little girl. And they told me that day that the kid that raped her still goes to school there. So they pressed the first lawsuit against the school in the school's history. 47 years of this shit going on. Nobody's pressed a fucking lawsuit. But this mother was not to be messed with. She's a lawyer.
Oh, man.
She's a lawyer who works for the attorney, for New York State, we'll say. I don't want to give away too much information.
Right, okay.
She's an attorney who works for New York State. And they're currently in litigation against the school right now. And I'm so proud of her. She's also just got into FIT. Out of nowhere, this girl starts ripping apart her clothing and said, I'm going to design new clothing with my clothing. She never took any design classes. She had no idea how to design clothes. And all of a sudden, she starts designing like these beautiful things. And it got her into a great fashion school. And she's going to go to school starting next year. Really so proud of her.
Yeah.
But that gave me the drive to say, I can't stop. I got to shut these fuckers down. My best friend, all these kids that were coming out on the Summit Group page. This was before Breaking Code Silence existed, by the way. This is before Paris Hilton's documentary came out. This is before everybody was talking about it. So I was alone in it. I didn't have anywhere to go. There were not boarding school survivors Facebook groups. There wasn't Breaking Cold Silence. There wasn't ICU Survivor. There wasn't Paris Hilton with the documentary. There was just me, who was mentally unstable at the time, wasn't really believed by anybody that I speak to about what happened, trying to get a bunch of other mentally unstable kids to come out with their stories. I didn't really have a roadmap. I kind of felt like I needed a roadmap from somebody who had done it before. I had approached some other survivor that I was introduced to, who is very well known in the movement. And she promised me to help me and give me a roadmap. And I mean, I can't believe she did this, but like, she promised to give me a roadmap. I'm going to help you through everything. Don't worry. I'm going to tell you what you need to do and how you need to go about it. And she completely abandoned me. Like, she just ignored me after that. We had a couple of great phone calls, and then she just totally ignored me and worked on her own stuff. She's one of the most well-known people that's in this movement. So I just felt so alone, you know? But Bela and all these other kids coming out with these stories just pushed me to keep going, until I couldn't anymore. I'm going to go back to the day at the beach when I was going to kill myself. I was sitting there staring at the water, and I saw a light, you know, just shine through. It was the sun, really. In reality, it was the sun, but you know, bright light hit my eyes, and I just looked up, and I looked at the beach, and I took a deep breath, and I looked at the pill bottle, And I said, something's not right here, Jay. This is not you. You got a family. I got 2 kids. I'm married. I have a good life. I have a really good life. And I said, this isn't me. I'm a good person. I'm a kind person. I'm a loving person. And I've never wanted to end my life before, so why now? And I look at the pill bottle, I'm like, oh my God, that's right. SSRIs cause suicidal tendencies. And I just missed my dose a few days ago and went into a manic phase. And I recognized that it was a manic phase. So this is not normal. And you don't really want to do this. You want to get off the drugs. And I took the pill bottle and I threw it in the garbage at the beach. I was on it for 4 years. Luckily, I had like 4 pills left at home in an old bottle because I had to wean myself off of it somehow. But I looked at the beach and I took a deep, deep cleansing breath after I threw that pill bottle out. And I said, I'm going to go meditate on the beach. I hadn't meditated in like 20 years, but I'm going to go meditate on the beach. And I did. I did for like half an hour. I just sat there, you know, with my hands like this and just chilling out with cross-legged and meditated. And I'm like, you know, I haven't done yoga in a while. I've been prior to that, maybe I'd been to like, you know, 20, 30 yoga classes in my life, but not much. And I started doing yoga and I had my shirt off and it was the summer and it was beautiful. And I said, this is how I'm going to get through. This is how I'm going to heal myself from my trauma. And this is, and after that meditation, I felt so good and I felt so calm and I felt like everything was going to be okay. And then I went back to the beach the next day and did the same thing for like 45 minutes. And then went back to the beach the next day and did the same thing for like an hour. And this has been going on, I guess this is like 6 months ago it started. I weighed 235 pounds when I started this. I'm 5'7", 235. I looked horrible. I was a big dude.
Yeah. For your size, yes.
Yeah.
For your height, I mean, not size, your height. Yes.
For my height, yeah, I was a big dude. I mean, my belly was like out to here. I was wearing extra larges. I was about to go from an extra large to an extra large. That's how big I was. And I did yoga and meditation every single day. And I figured out a way to, and I started researching different types of therapy for trauma, which is, you know, EMDR, DBT, CBT, exposure therapy. And I researched these things and took all different concepts from these different types of therapy, and I incorporated different concepts from each type of therapy into my meditation. And I finally found a therapist that was amazing. It was actually the first therapist in my life that was incredible. Everybody else kind of sucked. Mental health professionals, they never, ever did anything for me. They only made life worse for me. This guy made things much better. He's incredible. But I healed myself by going to the beach, and essentially, you know, the easiest way to explain my meditation, and if you want to know more about it, anybody can feel free to contact me to learn more about it. But the quickest and easy way to describe it is I breathe in the happiest place in the world for me. The happiest place in the world for me is in my wife's arms in our bed. Her just holding me in our bed, or me holding her in our bed, and just laying there in her comfort and in the most comfortable place that I know, my home. And you breathe that in, and every time I breathe that in and I think about it, it puts this smile on my face. and it makes me really happy. And then when you breathe out each day, you think of a new traumatic experience. Doesn't matter when it happened, doesn't matter if it had to do with Summit or something else. Whatever that first traumatic experience is that you have in your head, you breathe that out. You breathe thinking about it. You go over and over and over the exposure therapy. You go over that experience in your mind over and over and over again on your breath out. And then you breathe in the positive place and then breathe out the negative place. And you keep doing that for as long as you need to do that with big belly, deep breaths until you feel a sense of relief. And then you do it a little more. And then all of a sudden you come out of it. And it's gone. The experience is still there. Like you had it. I know I still went through that.
Right.
But the pain of it disappeared. And I did a new experience every single day. And I haven't stopped. I've missed 3 days in the past 6 months and lost 75 pounds. I now weigh about 160 pounds, a little over. And now I'm in the best mental. I'm not on drugs. I didn't go back on any pharmaceutical medications. I quit smoking weed, which I smoked since I was at Summit. I started smoking pot at Summit. And I'm in the best physical and mental health capacity of my life. Getting to that point, this is why I brought it up, is I was ready to quit. I was ready to quit the fight. A local news station did an investigative report that I had brought to them. I brought to them my story, and they had me in, put me on camera. They asked me, who else do you have that might want to be on camera? And I put the call out there in our group, and I started making phone calls, seeing who might be interested. And she interviewed a whole bunch of people, got a whole bunch of FOIL requests, which is, Freedom of Information Act.
Right.
From New York State, where she can get the records especially because it's a state-funded school, they have a lot of records. So they did a full-on investigative report, interviewed ex-counselors, ex-students, parents. They have the piece sitting on their desk. It took them 6 months to do. I was so convinced and so sure. They told me 5 different air dates. Jason, it's coming out next Tuesday. Jason, it's coming out next Friday. Jason, it's coming out right after the election. And they just kept saying, no, we got to find out more information. We need more FOIL requests. We sent it back to legal, and they're not happy with this part about it, so we got to work on it more. And just about a week ago, the reporter calls me and says, Jason, I'm sorry, it doesn't look like it's coming out. At least not right now. It was supposed to be an exclusive. So that's what really upset me, is like all of these months I could have been talking to other people.
Right.
All the energy that I put into doing the news, doing to this news thing, like I could have put into writing many different articles and, being on several different interviews, but she wouldn't let me do it because it was an exclusive piece. So she said, if you go to anybody else and talk to anybody else, or I hear your story anywhere, I'm stopping working on the piece. So that day she says, Jason, I understand if you want to go and talk to someone else now. So then I knew it was over, because an exclusive piece is an exclusive piece. Once I go somewhere else, they're not going to air it. So I contacted the director of that news station, and she wrote me back that it's not going to air now.
I wonder why.
They're not giving me a reason. I asked why. They won't give me a reason. It's a very connected school. Many multi-gazillionaires fund the school, give them funding. Each student that goes there, I believe the price tag for each student is $200,000 a year to go there.
Wow.
So it's just a huge moneymaker. And that's, I'm sure that the mayor of Upper Nyack and the mayor of Nyack and the police department, in the 2 different police departments that are in the area, like it says it in the video, like the one I released today, like the attitude of the people who worked there, this guy Tom, was, this is private property. Why are you coming over here and yelling at me for making a girl scream while I'm sitting on top of her? You have no right to tell me to get off of her, officer. This is private property. That was their feeling. The police didn't really get involved. They didn't really, screw with the school. And I have a feeling it's just a bunch of people in cahoots giving pressure to the school that wouldn't let them come out, that didn't want them to come out with it. So I quit like a week ago. Quit. I thought I was done. I was so sad. I got in a really bad place. I've been in a great mental place for at least good 5 months. I've been in really, really, the best mental health I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I had like a few bad days and got really depressed. And that led me to going on Breaking Code Silence's webpage and telling them how they're doing everything wrong and how I think that they should do them. And it wasn't that I came to them and said, hey, I think you should make these changes. I was a dick about it. Like I was rude. I was condescending. I was not this always at home person that like I knew that I became.
Yeah.
It was like this news station silenced me again. And it broke my heart because I finally thought that we had a voice and we were going to have a voice. And I thought this news thing would come out. And I was sure that, number one, I was going to spend as much money as I needed to get it across the globe. And I knew that all of my activist friends from across the globe and all of my celebrity friends, lots of them, signed on with me previously that once the story comes out, we're going to get it all over, man. Even Paris Hilton's people, they're like, Jason, the second you have it ready, give it to us and we're going to help you get the story out there. So I felt like I had like the loudest voice ever and this school was going to be shut down. And then all of a sudden, nope.
Door closed right in your face.
Door closed right in my face. And then I was introduced to you and we had our conversation. And you told me about a lot of other people that were working on this movement and the things that they were doing.
Yes.
And then I was introduced online to a different administrator of the Breaking Code Silence Facebook group. And she's been doing this for 30 years. 30 years she's been in the fight. And I was like sitting there saying, oh, I'm doing this 6 months and I'm exhausted. And like, I can't take I can't take not getting the story out there and being told one thing and being told another. I can't do this anymore. But you, Jay, and this other wonderful woman from Breaking Code Silence helped me realize that we have to continue the fight and we have to do anything and everything we can. I got to learn to take breaks once in a while. And I got to learn to go a lot slower than I was going. I got to learn to pace myself. I got to learn never to promise somebody again that I'm closing a school down within the next 6 months.
It does wear you down.
Yeah.
It does.
But you guys brought me back. And, today I posted the first video on the Summit School Exposed that I've posted in 4 months. And I'm feeling like slowly I can get back into it because I know I have a lot to offer. And I know this stuff, I still get phone calls from parents, from current students. The shit's still happening there. It's happening there all the time. I get calls from current students, parents. There's still rapes going on there from the staff to the kids. Forget about the kids to the kids. There's still physical abuse. There's emotional abuse everywhere you turn. There's no box anymore. They make it look prettier. They have goat therapy now. They teach more meditation now. Okay. And in between, they abuse the fucking kids.
Yeah, all that goes out the window. If they're still raping and abusing, all that therapy, goat, whatever, It doesn't mean a thing. Nothing.
Yeah, Governor Cuomo just a month or so ago came out and made a statement for the Summit School and their goat therapy program. If he only knew what his budget was going towards.
Hopefully this gets back to him. I wanted to remind you, you asked me to, about Paul and the child abuse.
Oh, yeah, and it's not just Paul. And thank you for bringing it back up.
Yes.
Paul, can I say his last name? He's dead.
Okay.
Paul Kubik.
I read that name somewhere. Yes. Yes.
Paul Kubik got found guilty by Child Protective Services of child abuse against me. I don't think that they use "we find him guilty." I think they said we find him to be in line, these actions that were committed in line with what we consider to be child abuse and neglect, or something like that. You know, it wasn't a judge saying we find you guilty. My parents did nothing about it. They swept it under the rug. I found out recently my family didn't know about it. My relatives didn't know about it. My parents' best friends didn't know about it. None of the kids that I knew had any idea. Even some of my friends looked at me and were like people that I've known since I'm 8 looked at me like, dude, are you lying? Like, why didn't you ever say anything to anybody about any of this? Well, because it was swept under the rug, but not just by my parents. He was continued to be employed there for like another 10 to 15 years, maybe more. And he just went up and up and up the ladder there. Until eventually, of course, he was fired for child abuse. So Richard knew, because he was his boss. He was Paul's boss. Richard knew that he was guilty of child abuse. Richard knew many other stories because I remember other kids going to Richie and saying, I remember other kids going to Richie and saying that this happened or that happened or this happened or that happened with this guy. Like, I watched Paul in the hallway, one of the scariest moments of my time there. I watched him go all out, boom, to this kid. I was going to say his name, but I won't. To the student's face, and knocked the kid cold on the floor. He falls on the floor and there's blood pouring out of his head. Like, this guy's the supervisor of the school, Richie. You didn't know about that? You didn't get the report from Child Protective Services, Richie? That he abused me? Come on. Yeah. And you let him continue to work there? Come on, man. And it wasn't just him. It was others. There was other counselors there that we have found through all of the investigation that I've done and all the interviews that I've done that Richie knew about so many. Richie knew about Tom, the one the video is about. Richie knew about Fred, the one that made me stand in my boxer shorts all night in the corner. Like, Richie knew about these people because other parents had called Richie to complain about these things. And I know this because I've spoken with those parents. Yet those people still work there right now. Johnny runs the fucking residence halls there. Plus, he says every single thing that goes on in every single dorm, what's allowed and what's not. The person who abused me the most.
And not to mention, you have other places you set up in Upper Nyack and Pennsylvania.
Oh, so the founder's name is Mayer, Mayer. Do your homework, people. The founder's name is Mayer. He founded the Summit School in Upper Nyack. He founded the Summit Camp in Pennsylvania. He founded 2 different schools, not residential treatment schools, but schools for children with disabilities in Queens. Apparently, allegedly, allegedly, Mayor was the worst abuser of everyone. All comes from the top, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Mayor allegedly sexually molested many, 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 many children at the camp. He used to have his favorite kids be transported from the Summit School in Nyack to the camp so they could come and help him. The stories of abuse are not as prevalent in the schools in Queens, but they exist. There's physical abuse. I haven't heard any sexual abuse at the schools in Queens, but I know there's physical abuse, and I know there's a ton of emotional abuse that's gone on there. The worst of it happened at the camp in Pennsylvania, but Mayor eventually sold the camp for a lot of money. Through my whole breakdown, I mean, I called a board member of the school. I found a board member. I looked in their 990s. Their 990s are what a nonprofit organization has to file each year to show who made what money and who the board members are. So I saw who the board members are. I figured, they live in New York. That person's name in New York. Look up their resumes on LinkedIn. Find out who the person is. Look up their phone number, and I gave them a call. It's that simple. The research is really that simple. And I called the board member, and I'll never forget talking to the board member. I have this phone call on recording, so don't try denying it, dude. I called up the board member, and I told the board member all about what went on. And I said, I'd like to meet with the board. Will you guys be willing to meet with me? I'll have to get back to you. 1 day later, 2 days later, after I spoke to that board member, I got a cease and desist letter from their law firm that I am no longer allowed to speak to anybody from that school. I am no longer allowed, I can't go to their campus. I can't go and speak to anybody who works there. I can't reach out to any board members. And they wrote me a cease and desist, but I had reached out to the board member. Richie refused to call me back once all this started, right? By the way, I actually started this 8 years ago. I contacted Richie 8 years ago because I said to Richie, because I didn't remember anything else. All I remembered was this Paul thing. So I said to Richie on the phone and in an email, hey, I never understood why you kept Paul employed there after he did what he did to me and was guilty of child abuse. He's like, I'll have to get back to you about that. And he ignored me and he ignored me and he ignored me and he ignored me for years. And eventually I just got tired of it and did all this crazy shit. I called Mayor, is what I was trying to get to the point of. And sadly, and I say sadly because I don't feel bad for shit for him, but sadly, it seems like he's too old to communicate. He's 93 years old. He was able to somewhat communicate. I can't wait to come out with that video because I'm going to eventually. But, abuse at the Summit School? Where'd you get that information from? What are you talking about? Yeah, you come after me. Okay. Couldn't really form great rebuttals, but was just denying that he ever did anything. But listen, I mean, anybody who, I almost want to say, sadly has the opportunity to become ultra obsessed with doing what we are doing in this fight. Let me tell you, if you become that way, put your energy into calling it. Mind you, let me preface it with this. Not every state in the country is a one call or one side record state, which means that I have the right to go up to anybody I want in the state of New York, and I can record my conversation that I have with them without them being aware that I am recording. As long as I know that we're recording, as long as one party knows that you're recording, you're allowed to record in the state of New York. So if you're in a state like that, I urge all activists out there, screw with these people. Call them, get them talking, pretend you love them, because I've done it. Pretend you love them, pretend you miss them, and get them comfortable with you. Get them talking, and eventually slowly bring in the ideas of abuse there, and then see what they say, and record these fuckers, and send it out to the world to show everybody. It's really easy to get information on people. LinkedIn, all of these searches that show you any name you look up, it'll show you, John Smith. Oh, there's 23 million John Smiths in the United States. What town are you looking for? And then you narrow it down to, where do I think he might live? Or let me look at his LinkedIn profile. Let me look at his Facebook profile, and let me see what city or town he lives in, and narrow it down and find that phone number. You might have to go through 5 or 6 phone numbers. With the 6th phone number, it's going to be the right person.
Yeah.
Just tell them you love them. Play them like they played us, and they will talk.
Jay.
Yeah.
Man. You've got me about as pissed off as you are. This is... Oh. I can't describe it in words.
I'm trying not to use terms like that, anymore. I used to all the time. I'm angry, I'm pissed off, I'm really sad, I'm hurt. I'm motivated. I'm excited. I'm excited that you and I have the opportunity to speak. I'm excited that I am alive. Thank you, freaking God, and thank you, Breaking Code Silence, and thank you to all the Summit students who were there for me when I was having a breakdown. These people all saved my life in so many ways. I am so grateful to my abusers. I forgive all of them. I forgive all of you. I'm grateful to them, because without them, I would never have this power that I had and desire that I have inside me to shut these pieces of shit down. Without them doing what they did to me, I wouldn't be doing any of this. Nobody's ever spoken up against Summit except for this little girl, Bayla.
To tell you the truth, Jay,
go ahead.
I've never heard of this school before until you came to me and talked to me about it. So just pretty telling. This place really knows how to silence a lot of people.
When I first spoke to, I think there was a phone conversation that I had a few months ago with Breaking Code Silence. They looked up in their database of like thousands of stories. Not a single one from my school. They're all over my Facebook group. You could go read them. They're really sad. Anybody, by the way, please join our Facebook group. Summit School Exposed.
We'll put it
resources.
in the,
I don't want you to be bystanders. I don't want you just reading the stories. I want people there who want to work to end this. I want people there who want to tell their own stories and get other students to come out. I want people there who can help amplify our voices and amplify this movement. And one more thing that I really want to drive home, and I talked to you the other day about this when we first spoke, Jay. This movement, I've gotten in contact with a lot of people that we might be able to consider leaders in this movement. And a lot of the leaders say often, too often, we're working on this, we're working on that, we're working on or somebody else. I'm working on a documentary. I'm working on I'm working on a podcast. I'm working on a documentary. I'm working on YouTube videos. I'm working on writing a book. I'm working on writing an article. I'm working on writing a bill. I'm working on this. I'm working on that. Okay, but when was the last time all of these people got together that are working on their own things and on their own schools and got together to all share resources with one another, to all share success stories, failures, things that work, things that don't work,
Ideas. That kind of
ideas,
yes.
and figure out ways that together we can actually form a grassroots movement where we all come together to all accomplish the same thing. That desperately needs to happen here. And it's not happening quick enough. Once we develop a grassroots movement, what a grassroots movement will allow us to do is all of us to coordinate efforts. So we're all doing things, knowing each other is doing it, when they're doing it, and able to therefore be able to promote what each other's doing in a timely manner, and therefore build 20, 30, 40, 100 times the amount of awareness that we could with those individual actions, instead of that person just working alone and doing their own thing. We are so much of a louder voice together, and we have to come together. And I urge people, contact me. You can email me. My email address is movementmusicrecords@gmail.com. Anybody who wants to get together and start sharing ideas and start building towards a national movement where we all know what each other's doing and we all can help each other and share each other's resources so we can shut these fuckers down quicker, please contact me, because we got to do this, and we can do this. I've been a part of some pretty massive movements in this country. I was one of the first people to be one of the first 50 people down at Occupy Wall Street. And I didn't stop being a part of Occupy Wall Street until they fell out of the public eye. And even after that, I continued to do projects that all revolved around the ideals of getting corporate money out of decisions of politics and out of decisions of the 99%. Well, you know what? We are the 99%. We still are, and I'm still fighting for the same thing. The abused, we are 99%. Us survivors, we are 99%. We are part of that. And we can't let this corporate machine take us over. Because that's what it is. This is all about money. This is all about the mighty dollar. So if we come together and fight it, we can grow as quickly as Occupy Wall Street did. We can, we very, very quickly, the anti-fracking movement that I was a part of, very quickly, within about a year or so's time, got Governor Cuomo to ban fracking in New York. And it wasn't because one organization did it. It's because a bunch of organizations came together and coordinated their efforts. And everything was done as one anti-fracking movement. Same thing with Black Lives Matter. Been part of that movement for a while. And, it's so many people across this country sharing resources and success stories with one another on how best to amplify the message and how best to put together marches and what we should or shouldn't do at marches. We all share these resources with one another. And we have to, the Me Too movement, oh my God. I know some of the people who organized the Women's March. I know them personally. And I know that the people who organized the Women's March, it wasn't just one group of people. It was so many different organizations coming together to say Me Too. We have to do the same. We can't do it the way we're doing it anymore. We've been banging, it pains me like crazy that for 30 years, this wonderful woman has been working on trying to shut the industry down. 30 years. That's since I went to school and I was being abused. something's not working. We need to help each other, and I pray that we do.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Jay.
Very, very powerful.
Thank you for having me, man. I love what you do, and I know you're not a survivor yourself, and we need more of you, because there's not too many people that are not survivors that are out there willing to put. I mean, dude, you're putting your life on the line. You know, some survivors are getting death threats. I've gotten death threats. This is not a pretty job, but like, you have a heart of gold to be doing what you're doing when you didn't even experience it. It's not your problem, dude, but you made it your problem, and that's what we need the rest of the world to do. So thank you.
You're welcome. And it's gonna continue to go on. You know what I mean? I don't plan on stopping anytime soon.
Good.
So
That's a relief.
thank you for being on,
Yeah.
Jay, and sharing your story with us.
Peace, love, and namaste, everybody. Take
Yeah.
care of yourselves. Stay strong.
Yes. I want to thank everyone for watching today. I want to thank Jay for being on the podcast and sharing his story. If you would like to support the channel, please subscribe so you can get notified of future videos. All right, so for the Hammer Podcast, I'm Jason. You take care of yourself. You take care of each other. See you later.